Hello everyone, hope y'all are having a great Sunday so far. In tonight's forecast update, we're going to be talking about our severe weather risk for tomorrow on Tuesday, and then we'll be also talking about our severe weather risk for later on in the week for Thursday and Friday for portions of the central US. And that'll be the main topic for tonight's video. We'll just be discussing severe weather, and I will have timestamps in the video so y'all can click to any section y'all want to see in the description or on the timeline of the video. But we're going to go ahead and get started with the update for tonight. So first, starting out with tomorrow's severe weather risk on Monday, April the 14th. And so we do have a slight risk into southwestern Pennsylvania, far western Maryland, northwestern Virginia, quite a bit of West Virginia, into central and southern Ohio, and then into northwestern, not northwestern, northeastern Kentucky, and extreme southeastern Indiana for tomorrow. And then we have a level 1 out of 5 marginal risk around that into Ohio, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Indiana once again for tomorrow. And so if you look here at our tornado risk, we do have a 5%. Let me zoom in on this a little bit more. We do have a 5% tornado risk into, West Virginia, Ohio, and then into Kentucky just a little bit there. And then we also have a 2% risk around that in the green color, and that is from Pennsylvania into Ohio, into Kentucky, West Virginia, and then small portion of Virginia and Maryland for tomorrow. And then looking at our wind risk, we do have a 15% wind risk here in the yellow color into Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania for tomorrow. And then we have a 5% wind risk as well around that into Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, and into Pennsylvania once again for tomorrow. And then finally, looking at our hail risk, almost the same areas. We have a 15% hail risk in the yellow color, and then a 5% hail risk in the brown color into Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, once again Maryland, Pennsylvania, and then the 15% risk into Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, Maryland, and a small section of Virginia once again for tomorrow's severe weather risk. So mainly just looking at the HRRR for tomorrow. And so if we go to around tomorrow afternoon and evening, you already have some storms beginning to form into Kentucky. And basically what our storm mode is going to be is just some clusters, maybe some isolated storms, but mainly a kind of long line of storms along the cold front that'll drape southward throughout the day into these areas. Beginning into tomorrow evening, you have a pretty broad area of storm development all the way from Pennsylvania into West Virginia, into Kentucky, southern Ohio, and even farther into Tennessee just a little bit, but our main concern up here into West Virginia for tomorrow. Then as we get into tomorrow evening and tomorrow night, you still have quite a few storms here lasting throughout the day, and some areas could see a good bit of rainfall from these storms, especially if they linger over the areas for quite some time. But by late tomorrow night on Monday and early on Tuesday, these storms will continue to weaken and should be pretty much weakened and below the severe weather below the severe weather kind of risk or standards, I should say, really by late Monday night, again Tuesday morning, and you just should have some showers for the most part by Tuesday morning into the northeast and portions of the mid-Atlantic. So if we look at our dew points here real quick for tomorrow, as you can see, dew points into the, let me go back a little bit. Dew points into the 60s into Kentucky, and dew points into the 50s throughout the rest of the mid-Atlantic, or quite a bit of the mid-Atlantic. But dew points should stay into the 60s, and you should have a plume of those lower 60 dew points moving into Ohio, eastern Kentucky, West Virginia by tomorrow night. And then getting further into the night, those dew points will continue to tick down as you go throughout the day, and most of that moisture should be pushed off into the Atlantic late tomorrow night into Tuesday, and dew points just into the 50s for most of those areas by Tuesday morning for the most part. And your severe weather risk should be down by then. So finally, looking at some of our instability, we'll just look at surface-based instability. And before these storms form, you will have plenty of surface-based instability, especially into Kentucky. Some areas showing up here on the HRRR. Let me go back here a little bit. Areas of over 2,000 joules per kilogram of surface-based CAPE into Kentucky, then into West Virginia, and maybe even into Virginia, Pennsylvania. CAPE levels of over 1,000 joules per kilogram. Plenty of storm fuel for those storms for tomorrow. And if you look at 0 to 3 kilometer CAPE as well, especially along those areas with that a little bit more instability, those will be the areas where you could see a little bit more spin in the atmosphere with the 0 to 3 kilometer CAPE levels exceeding 50 joules per kilogram. But some areas may be seeing over 100 joules per kilogram of 0 to 3 kilometer CAPE. And once again, that'll help with tornado genesis if any storms are able to get some rotation in them, and that would once again help to promote that tornado threat tomorrow on Monday. But really, that'll be about it for Monday's severe weather risk. So now looking more towards the end of the week, looking at Thursday and Friday. And so here on Thursday, April 17th, we do have a 15% risk over Iowa, eastern Nebraska, northern Missouri, and extreme northeastern Kansas once again for Thursday, April 17th. And then as we move into day 6, which is on Friday, April the 14th, and so we have a pretty wide slight risk, 15% risk, all the way from Michigan to the southwest into Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, southeastern Kansas, northwestern Arkansas, Oklahoma, and north central Texas once again for Friday. So just real quick, discussing the setup for later this week. So if we start out with the the GFS, and if we go to Wednesday night, and then we go to Thursday morning by this point, as you can see, here's our surface low pressure situated around into the Dakotas for Thursday on the GFS weather model. And so continuing that on into midday Thursday afternoon. And so around into the east of that low pressure, you're going to start to have storms beginning to form by that point, especially across Iowa, southeastern South Dakota, into Nebraska, as well as Missouri, Kansas as well, just a little bit on Thursday. And so if we look at our 500 millibar vorticity here, you can see our main trough out to the northwest, and so you will have your surface low pressure well to the east of that well to the east of that trough, but you can maybe see some small disturbances in the flow, and that would be our short waves into those areas, helping with that severe weather risk. And as you can see, you can look here and see some areas of increased flow into central Kansas, and then into Colorado, Nebraska, and into South Dakota as well. And then once again, you could see little kinks there, maybe some short waves in the flow, helping to promote the severe weather risk. And then as you get into Friday, you have your kind of almost secondary low pressure, but you still have the other one up here lifting further to the north, but you have your other one draping out to the west, and you have moisture getting pumped into the central U.S. and then up here into portions of the Great Lakes states. And that would help to once again bring another severe weather risk for Friday. And you will have a decent amount of moisture with this system, or systems really. If we get into Thursday, dew points into the 60s into quite a bit of the central U.S., and then up here into the kind of Midwest and North Central U.S., dew points into the mid-50s. Further to the south, same story, into the kind of South Central U.S. into the low 60s for the dew points there. You get into Friday, same story. You have quite a large moist sector here. Dew points into the 60s all the way from Missouri, even into Ohio, down to the south, even into Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, for your Friday severe weather risk. And you're going to have a little bit of probably a dry line set up for Thursday maybe into some of these areas. Same with Friday, I would say maybe further to the south, possibly into Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, potentially. But we'll have to watch that. And you could still see some moisture get pumped into these areas for this weekend, and we'll have to watch it once again for another kind of severe weather risk this weekend. But that is what the GFS shows at this time. Now, if we look at the European weather model, the 12Z run, continue this on and go into Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Same idea here with the low pressure being into almost around the same area as the GFS. Has your storms up here into Iowa, Illinois, Missouri for Thursday, getting into Thursday night, and then finally into Friday. Same story. You have your low pressure not really showing up here on the European as well as what the GFS shows, but you still have your low pressure well up to the Midwest, and you have those storms strung out there across the Midwest and Great Lakes states. And you have your moisture strung out once again, a pretty decently large moisture sector on Friday. And then for the weekend, same story. Moisture gets pumped up even further to the north for the weekend on the European. And so we'll have to watch that once again. But really, we can't get too deep into this because it is just a little bit further out. If we look at our low level jet for Thursday and Friday here, if it'll load, and we go to Thursday, and the European shows a pretty decent low level jet across Illinois, Missouri, even into Kansas on Thursday, and then it amplifies further into Friday or Thursday night, I should say, and then into Friday. You have a once again pretty strung out low level jet across the mid south and then into the south central U.S. And so we'll have to watch that once again. And looking at Saturday into Sunday, nothing crazy showing up. And then as you get into Monday, we'll have to watch that with maybe a potential other system, but we are getting a little bit further out by that point. So that's just going to be the main things we'll have to watch as we get over the next week into this weekend. And then finally, we'll look at our height anomalies to show our ridging in the red and our troughing in the blue. So continuing that on, you're going to have ridging built into the eastern U.S. probably later this weekend or this weekend. Our troughing, our system represented here in the blue for our severe weather risk. And so you're going to have exactly what the European and GFS shows, a kind of path to the northeast through the central U.S. and up into the north central U.S. for our low pressures. And so if we continue that forward into this weekend and into next week, ridging builds quite a bit here into the eastern U.S. So I could definitely see it possible where I could definitely see some dry conditions being a little bit more possible across these areas, but you should have still some moisture there for those areas into the eastern U.S., just not a lot of precipitation. But looks like troughing remains quite a bit out here into the southwestern U.S. and central U.S. for this weekend. And as we get into next week, once again, ridging to the east and troughing out here into the western portions of the western U.S. So the eastern U.S. should be a little bit above average or quite a bit above average at some points for your temperatures, but that could definitely fluctuate for sure as we get further into the time frame. But we'll see. We'll continue to watch these systems and see what we may need to watch for these upcoming severe weather days. So that's going to be it for tonight's severe weather update. I appreciate all of y'all watching, and I'll try to have another video out maybe before our Thursday and Friday severe weather risk. And we'll see what happens before that. And I do think we could see some more risk being issued by the Storm Prediction Center into this weekend for sure across some of these areas into the central or eastern U.S. But that'll be it once again for our update for tonight. And I appreciate all of y'all watching, and I hope y'all have a great week.